Good evening, dear students. You are most welcome in your own YouTube channel, Learning with Rajesh. In 10th class Geography, we have started lesson number 2 named as Forest and Wildlife Resources. In this lesson, part 1, you learnt about biodiversity yesterday and you also learned the benefits of biodiversity and the classification of species according to IUCN. Today, we are going to read about why this biodiversity is going to deplete. So what are the responsible factors for depletion of this biodiversity? We are going to read separately what are the responsible factors for depletion of forest and depletion of wildlife. So we learned this topic through example of Asiatic cheetah. We learned that with the bad practices of human being, Asiatic cheetah lost from India and from all over the world from 1952. So we are going to read the first one topic of today, factors responsible for the depletion of forest. First is development plans. You know that development plans are also responsible for the depletion of forest. For example, we are going to set up industries in the area, so we don't have sufficient land. So to acquire land, we have to deforest the land for development plans. And for mining also, you know that when we are going to mine or to get some minerals from the earth, we have to cut the trees from the forests. uh, it means development of plants are also responsible for depletion of forest. I think with example you got this point. And the next point is deforestation. So deforestation, for many purpose, you can say that for development purpose and for our uh, wood purpose and whatever the purpose is, deforestation is also responsible for depletion of forest. And third point is environment disbalance. you know so we are polluting the environments with our bad practices, like for air pollution and land pollution, and so that's why there is lack of rainfall. You know that if there is lack of rainfall, there will be less or mean degradation in the forest also. You know that environment balance is also the third major point of responsible for the depletion of forest. So I think you got the point easily. Second point of today's, how are human activities responsible for depletion of forest and wildlife? You can give two examples for forest and two examples for wildlife, or means two reason for forest and two for wildlife. So first for hunting. You know that hunting is also responsible for the depletion of, or means decreasing of, wildlife resources. Second point, illegal trades. So there will be ILLEGAL, illegal here. So illegal trade of animals. We are good. So you know that Asiatic cheetah is also the same case, trade for illegal purposes. That's why the Asiatic cheetah lost. So you know that illegal trade is also the responsible factor for depletion of wildlife resource, and cutting of forest and pollution is also important factor for depletion of forest and wildlife. Yeah, I think you got the third point also. And the next point, Himalayan yaw in danger. We have had an example of Asiatic cheetah in the box, and we learned yesterday. So that's in the same way there is example of Himalayan yaw. That's why our practices, our bad practices are depleting this valuable tree, Himalayan yaw. So you are going to read about the features of Himalayan yaw and why the Himalayan yaw in danger. So this is the medicinal plant, used for cancer treatment, and this is found in Himachal Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh. So mainly found in these two states. So turned dry due to overuse. So we used these plants a lot of it means at number of points, or means excess use of this Himalayan yew turned it to the dry. So that's why number of trees in these states turned dry because of excess use for treatment of cancer. So it means we are responsible, our practices are responsible for depletion of forest and wildlife also. Fourth point of today, why do we conserve forest and wildlife? So you know that Asiatic cheetah gone lost and Himalayan you endangered, and so you know that there is environmental disbalance and ecosystem is not too much good nowadays. So that's why we do we do conserve the forest and wildlife. So why do we conserve the forest and wildlife? Some factors are there for maintaining biodiversity and for maintaining ecosystem, and third point is for everyday needs. You know that ecosystem fulfills our everyday needs because we are depend on animals, plants and everything. So that's why we need to conserve the forest and wildlife for everyday needs. I think you got point easily. Now there is question for you. Why Himalayan yew in danger? I think you have answer for this. So you can tell me. Himalayan yew is a medicinal plant and this is found in Himachal Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh, and this is used for treatment of cancer. So overuse turned it to dry. So that's why Himalayan yew in danger. So the next question of today, we are going to discuss why do we conserve the forest and wildlife. There is answer. I think you have answer for this. For maintaining biodiversity and for maintaining ecosystem and for everyday needs. I think you got these 4 points of data very easily. Fifth important point of lesson, you know that there will be 5 marks question in the exam. So what are the efforts made by government for conservation of wildlife resources? So for wildlife resources, Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972 passed. So there can be separate question in CBSE exam that so how the Indian Wildlife Protection Act 1972 fulfilled or successful in conservation of wildlife resources. You can learn it also. So how it was successful for conservation of wildlife, we are going to read in this Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Under the provision of this act, government prepared a list of animals. You know that a government prepared a list of animals which are vulnerable and which are extinct and which are in danger, so the government prepared a list of animals, such animals, and hunting is banned for such animals. And next point is government will play an important role for conservation of wildlife. It means the government will also plan for conservation for wildlife. And the last major point, national park and wildlife sanctuary were made by the government to protect, to give them shelter, so to give shelter to the animals. So I think you got this question answer easily, and I am going to ask an objective type question from you. So when was Indian Wildlife Protection Act passed? And I think you have answer is 1972. And next point, so for conservation of animals, so the next project is also made by the government, Project Tiger 1973. There will be objective type in the exam. When was Project Tiger passed, or means Project Tiger plan was made? So you can answer in 1973. So first point, why Project Tiger? So because tigers were decreasing due to hunting, due to lack of shelter with the region of illegal trades. You know that Project Tiger was made by the government because tigers was decreasing due to hunting, because of lack of shelter and because of illegal trade. So that's why the government made 27 tiger reserve for this purpose. So these are some example of Project Tiger in India, like Manas Tiger Reserve in Assam, Sundarban in West Bengal, and Sariska and Bandhavgarh in Rajasthan. These are some examples of tiger reserve in India. Now the next point of the lesson, Wildlife Protection Act 1980 and 1986. So there were changes or amendment in this act of 1972. So in 1980 and 1986. So what were the major provisions under the Wildlife Protection Act of 1980 and 1986? First one, these Protection Act focused on small insects and like butterfly, dragonflies, etc. And in 1991, after the 1986 Protection Act, in 1991, 6 species of plants also included for conservation, first time in the history. So that's why these are the importance of Wildlife Protection Act 1980 and 1986. And the next question or next major point of the lesson, classification of forest. Classification of forest. In 9th class, you learned in natural vegetation about the classification of forest. So there were evergreen forest, deciduous forest, but this one is the different. So I think you learned this topic in history in 9th class. There are 3 major classification of forest according to management. According to management here means who is going to control these forests. So first is reserved. Reserved are the forests which are under the control of government. These are the valuable forests, very valuable forests. And second one, protected. These are also under the control of government. And third is unclassified. Unclassified as the forest under the control of community or people or by none. It means unclassified are sometimes under the control of community or people, and sometimes they are controlless. And now, in which states these 3 types of forest found mainly, we are going to discuss it, that in which states these 3 forests are found mainly. First is reserved forest. Reserved forests are found in Jammu and Kashmir, Uttarakhand, Kerala and Tamil Nadu, etc. So these are mainly found in these states. And next is protected. Protected forests are mainly found in MP. And I think you learned this point in textbook also. 75% of protected forests are found mainly in Madhya Pradesh. And the last point of the day, unclassified. These types of forests are found in northeast. The northeast states like Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Assam, Meghalaya, and also found in Gujarat. I think you got the point. Now I am going to ask a question from you. What are the major provisions under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act of 1972? And I think you have answered that. Under this Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the government prepared a list of animals, list of endangered animals, and also ban on hunting, and the government will play important role for the conservation of or for the protection of these animals, and there will be national parks and wildlife sanctuary made by the government. I think you got all the points. And now the last point or last question of the day. So what do you know or means what are the feature of Project Tiger? So tell me the objective type question firstly. In which year Project Tiger launched by the government? I think there is answer, and answer will be 1973. And why the Project Tiger started by the government? Because there is decreasing in the number of tigers due to hunting and due to illegal trade, and that's why the government made 27 tiger reserves. I think you enjoyed our session, and if you enjoyed our session, please like, share and subscribe also. Thank you and have a nice evening.